The silence of space filled the bridge of the battlecruiser Vengeance as it moved through the darkness between stars. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the swirling colors of distant nebulae through the main view screen. The ship had been on patrol for 3 weeks now, checking trade routes and keeping peace in the outer systems. It was quiet work, but Jake knew that quiet could change in seconds. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the deep space channels," said Ensign Lisa Harper from her communications station. Her voice carried a note of confusion that made Jake turn toward her. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, standing up and walking over to Lisa's station. The young woman had been with his crew for 2 years now, and she had good instincts about unusual signals. Lisa adjusted her headset and frowned at her screens. "It's very faint, sir. The signal is breaking up, but it sounds like a distress call. The language is unknown to our computers." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her tactical station. "Could be pirates using coded messages," she suggested. Amy had served on border patrol ships before joining the Vengeance, and she always thought about threats first. "No, this doesn't feel like pirates," Lisa said, shaking her head. "The tone is different. Desperate, but not trying to hide anything. They want someone to hear them." Commander Pete Sullivan turned around in the chief engineer's seat. "Want me to boost the signal processors? Might be able to clean up the transmission." Jake nodded. "Do it, Pete. Lisa, record everything and run it through the translation programs. Even if we can't understand the words, maybe we can figure out the meaning." The bridge fell quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the clicking of keyboards. Jake watched his crew work, proud of how they handled unusual situations. The men and women under his command came from all over human space, but they worked together like family. "Got it," Pete announced after several minutes. "Signal's much clearer now." Lisa's eyes widened as she listened through her headset. "Captain, you need to hear this." The computer managed to translate some of it. Jake took the offered headset and listened. Through the static, he heard voices that sounded nothing like human speech. They were higher pitched with musical qualities, but the emotion came through clearly. Fear, pain, desperation. "Help us. Dying. They kill everything. No mercy. Children. Please. Someone here." The words were broken and mixed with untranslatable sounds, but the message was clear enough. Someone was in terrible trouble. "Any idea where it's coming from?" Jake asked, handing back the headset. "The signal originated from the direction of the Kepler 442 system," Amy reported, checking her navigation displays. "That's about 6 light-years from here." "What do we know about that system?" Jake asked. Amy pulled up star charts on the main screen. 3 planets, 2 gas giants. The 3rd planet shows signs of civilization, but we've never made contact. The computer says it's inhabited by a species called the Zilani. "Zilani," Jake repeated, thinking. "I've heard that name before. Aren't they the ones with advanced medical technology?" "That's right," Pete confirmed, accessing the ship's database. "Peaceful people from what little we know. They've traded medical supplies to some of the outer colonies, but they don't like to leave their home systems." Lisa suddenly grabbed Jake's arm. "Captain, I'm getting another transmission. This one is clearer." She put the signal through the bridge speakers. The musical alien voices filled the room, but now the computer could translate most of the words. 2. Anyone who can hear this message, we are the Zilani of the 3rd world of our sun. We are under attack by forces that call themselves the Corvin Dominion. They have destroyed 3 of our colony worlds. They kill everyone, even children and the sick. We have no weapons to fight them. Our ships are built for healing and exploration, not war. If there are others out there who believe in protecting innocent life, please help us. We cannot survive much longer." The bridge went completely silent. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had heard about genocide before, read about it in history books, but hearing it happen in real time was different. "How long ago was this sent?" he asked quietly. "The signal lag suggests about 18 hours, Amy answered. "If they were under active attack when they sent it," she didn't need to finish. Everyone understood what 18 hours could mean in a battle. Jake walked to his command chair, his mind racing. Standard procedure was to report any first contact situations to Terra Command and wait for orders. But standard procedure didn't account for genocide in progress. Lisa, open a channel to Admiral Phillips at Terra Command. Maximum priority. Yes, sir. Channel open. The view screen flickered and showed the face of Admiral Kate Phillips. She was a tough woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many wars. Jake, what's the emergency? She asked without preamble. Admiral, we've intercepted distress calls from an unknown species called the Zilani. They're reporting genocide by something called the Corvan Dominion. Jake quickly explained what they had heard. Admiral Phillips' expression grew darker as she listened. Send me all the recordings immediately. How far are you from their system? 6 light years, ma'am. About 14 hours at maximum speed. Maintain your current position, Captain. Do not approach the system without direct orders. Jake felt his jaw tighten. Admiral, if there are civilians under attack. I understand your feelings, Captain, but we don't know what we're dealing with. The Corvan could have ships that would destroy you before you could help anyone. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew pretended to work at their stations, but he could feel their tension. They had all heard the desperation in those alien voices. An hour passed. Then 2. Jake paced the bridge, unable to sit still. Lisa continued monitoring the Zilani frequency, but no new messages came through. The silence was worse than the calls for help. Captain, Amy said suddenly, I'm detecting something on long-range sensors. Ships moving toward the Zilani system. Jake hurried to her station. How many? At least 20, sir. They're big and they're moving fast. Before Jake could respond, Lisa called out, Admiral Phillips is calling back, sir. The Admiral's face appeared on screen again, but this time she looked grim and determined. Captain Morrison, I've reviewed your recordings and consulted with the Terran Council. We cannot ignore a genocide in progress. You are authorized to proceed to the Zilani system for reconnaissance only. Gather intelligence, but do not engage unless directly attacked. Jake felt relief flood through him. Yes, ma'am. What about reinforcements? Admiral Phillips's smile was cold and sharp. Captain, when word of this gets out, every human ship in the sector will want to join you. We don't let innocent people die while we stand by and watch. That's not who we are. Understood, Admiral. Jake, she added, her voice softer. Be careful. The galaxy is full of predators, but they're about to learn why Earth's children are called Deathworlders. The transmission ended. Jake turned to his crew, seeing the same determination in their faces that he felt in his heart. All right, people. Plot a course for the Zilani system. Maximum speed. Amy, I want all weapons ready and shields charged. Pete, push the engines as hard as they'll go. Lisa, keep monitoring their frequencies. As the Vengeance turned toward the Zilani system and jumped to hyperspace, Jake wondered what they would find when they arrived. He hoped they wouldn't be too late to save whoever was left. The 14 hours of travel to the Zilani system felt like the longest in Jake Morrison's life. The Vengeance moved through hyperspace at maximum speed, but every minute that passed could mean more innocent lives lost. Jake sat in his ready room, studying everything the ship's computer could tell him about the Zilani. The files were thin. The Zilani were a peaceful species that had developed amazing medical technology. They had visited a few human colonies over the years, always to help with diseases or injuries that human doctors couldn't treat. The reports described them as tall, graceful beings with large eyes and gentle voices. They had never asked for payment, only that the humans they helped would remember their kindness. A knock on his door interrupted his reading. Come in, Jake called. Commander Pete Sullivan entered, looking worried. Captain, I've been thinking about what we might find when we get there. What's on your mind, Pete? Pete sat down across from Jake's desk. If this Corvan Dominion has been attacking for 18 hours, there might not be much left to save. Are we prepared for that? Jake set down his tablet and looked at his old friend. Pete had served with him for 5 years through border conflicts and pirate raids. He was a good man who cared about his crew. We have to try, Pete. Even if we can only save one Zilani life, it's worth it. I know, sir. It's just that the crew is wound pretty tight. They've been listening to those distress calls, and everyone's angry. I've never seen Amy Rodriguez look so cold, Jake understood. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy for their protective instincts. Other species called them Deathworlders because they came from a planet so dangerous that most aliens couldn't survive there. But the real reason humans were feared was their reaction to cruelty. They could ignore insults and theft, but harming innocents triggered something primal in them. Keep the crew focused, Pete. We'll need everyone at their best when we arrive. 12 hours later, the Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zilani system. What they saw made Jake's blood run cold. The system was full of debris. Pieces of ships floated in the darkness, some still glowing from recent explosions. The third planet, the Zilani homeworld, was surrounded by massive alien vessels that looked nothing like the peaceful ships in the debris field. "My God," whispered Lisa Harper from her communications station. Jake stood up slowly, staring at the main view screen. "Amy, what are we looking at?" Lieutenant Rodriguez worked frantically at her tactical station. 37 large warships, Captain. They're 3 times the size of anything in our fleet. And, sir, I'm detecting weapons fire near the planet. Screen, Jake ordered. The view screen zoomed in on the planet's orbit. Jake watched in horror as the massive alien warships fired on much smaller vessels that were clearly trying to escape. The small ships had no weapons, no shields strong enough to matter. They were transport vessels, probably carrying civilians. "They're shooting at evacuation ships," Amy said, her voice tight with anger. Jake watched one of the small ships explode in a bright flash. He thought about the families that had been aboard, the children who would never grow up. His hands clenched into fists. "Captain," Lisa called out, "I'm getting a transmission from one of the small ships. They're asking for help." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was different from the earlier distress calls. This one was weaker, filled with pain. "Unknown vessel, this is the Zilani ship Healing Wind. We are badly damaged and carrying wounded civilians. Please, if you can hear us, we need help." Jake didn't hesitate. "Lisa, open a channel. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Vengeance. We're here to help. Can you reach us?" There was a long pause, then a voice filled with desperate hope. "Humans, you came? Yes, we can reach you, but the Corvin ships will follow us. Let us worry about the Corvin. Pete, take us to that ship. Amy, prepare for combat. If they want to fight, they'll get one." The Vengeance moved quickly toward the damaged Zilani vessel. Jake could see it now on the view screen, a beautiful ship with flowing lines that reminded him of artwork. But it was clearly dying, trailing atmosphere and debris as it limped away from the planet. 3 Corvin ships are moving to intercept," Amy reported. "They're big, Captain. Each one outguns us, by at least 4 to 1. Then we'll have to be smarter than them," Jake replied. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill." Warning lights flashed red throughout the ship as the crew prepared for combat. Jake had fought pirates and raiders before, but never anything this large. He looked around the bridge at his people and felt proud. They were scared, but they were ready to fight. The Corvin ships were closing fast when the Vengeance reached the Healing Wind. The alien vessel was even more damaged than it had looked from a distance. Holes in its hull showed where weapons had torn through it. "They're asking to dock," Lisa reported. "Do it," Jake ordered. "Amy, keep those Corvin ships back. Warning shots only until they fire first." The Vengeance fired its forward gun, sending bright energy bolts across the path of the approaching Corvin vessels. The alien ships slowed, but didn't stop. "They're targeting us," Amy said grimly. Then they made their choice. Fire at will. The space around the Vengeance erupted in weapons fire. The human ship was smaller and faster than the Corvin vessels, but Jake knew they couldn't win a straight fight. They had to buy time for the Zilani to dock. "Docking complete," Pete announced. "They're coming aboard now." "Get us out of here," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed away from those warships." The Vengeance accelerated away from the Corvin vessels, its engines straining. Behind them, the alien warships gave chase, but they were too big to match the human ship's speed. "We're clear," Amy reported. "But Captain, you need to see this." Jake turned to look at the view screen, which now showed the space around the Zilani planet. More evacuation ships were trying to escape, but the Corvin were hunting them down one by one. As Jake watched, a ship clearly marked with medical symbols was destroyed. "They're targeting hospital ships," Amy said, her voice shaking with rage. Jake felt something cold and dangerous settle in his chest. He had seen war before, but this was different. This was pure evil. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "the Zilani representatives are here." Jake turned to see 3 tall, graceful beings entering the bridge. They were even more beautiful than the reports had described, with large eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. But those eyes were now filled with tears. The leader of the group stepped forward and spoke in accented but clear English. "I am Elder Thys of the Zilani. Captain Morrison, your people have answered our call for help. We are grateful beyond words." Jake walked over to the elder and looked into those large, sad eyes. "Tell me what happened here." Elder Thys's voice was soft but carried the weight of terrible pain. "The Corvin Dominion came to our system 6 days ago. They said we were weak and unworthy of life. They began destroying our colonies, killing everyone they found. Men, women, children, the sick, the old. They take no prisoners. They allow no surrender." "Why?" Jake asked. "What do they want?" "Nothing," Elder Thys replied. "They kill because they believe only the strong deserve to live. They have done this to 7 other species in our sector. We are the 8th. Jake felt his anger growing, but he kept his voice calm. "How many of your people are left?" "Perhaps 2 million on the homeworld. Maybe 300,000 on the evacuation ships. We had 50 million before they came." The number hit Jake like a physical blow. 47 million people dead in 6 days. He looked at the view screen again, watching more Zilani ships die in the distance. "Elder Thys," Jake said quietly, "I'm going to contact my government. We're going to stop this." The elder looked at him with hope and desperation. "Can you truly help us? The Corvin have weapons beyond our understanding. They are so strong." Jake smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had found prey that needed to be stopped. "Elder, let me tell you something about humans. We don't measure strength by how many innocents you can kill. We measure it by how many innocents you're willing to die to protect." He turned to Lisa. "Open a channel to Admiral Phillips, maximum priority. Tell her we have refugees aboard and we need the fleet. All of it." As Jake looked back at the dying Zilani system, he made a promise to himself. The Corvin Dominion had made a terrible mistake. They had started a genocide while humans were watching. Now they would learn why Earth's children were called Deathworlders. Admiral Kate Phillips stood in the main command center of Terra Central, staring at the massive displays showing human fleet positions across the galaxy. The emergency meeting with the Terran Council had ended an hour ago, and now she was watching something she had hoped never to see again. The complete mobilization of humanity's military forces. The word genocide had that effect on humans. It didn't matter that the victims were aliens they had barely met. It didn't matter that the enemy was unknown and powerful. When innocent, people were being murdered simply for existing, humans responded with a fury that had made them legendary across the galaxy. "Admiral," called Commander Ryan Cooper from his station. "We're getting responses from fleet commanders across all sectors." Kate walked over to Ryan's position and looked at the incoming messages. Every single human warship that could move was already heading toward Zilani space. Captains weren't waiting for detailed orders. They had heard the word genocide, and that was enough. "What's our total strength?" Kate asked. 237 combat vessels will be able to reach the Zilani system within 72 hours, Ryan reported. That includes 12 dreadnoughts, 34 battlecruisers, and 40 destroyer squadrons. Kate nodded. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled. "What about supply ships?" "Every transport and cargo vessel in the outer sectors is loading medical supplies and emergency food. The civilian shipping companies are volunteering their entire fleets." A new voice spoke from behind them. "Admiral Phillips, the President, is on the secure channel. Kate turned to see a young lieutenant holding a communication tablet. She took it and saw the face of President Maria Santos appear on the screen. Kate, I've been watching the fleet reports. Are we really committing everything? Yes, Madam President. This is exactly what the Death World Protocol was designed for. President Santos was quiet for a moment. She was a politician, but she had also been a soldier once. She understood what genocide meant. Do we know anything about these Corvan? The President asked. Captain Morrison sent us recordings of Elder Theis's testimony. The Corvan Dominion has destroyed 8 different species over the past 50 years. They believe that only strong races deserve to live, and they consider mercy to be weakness. How strong are they? Kate looked at her tactical displays. Their individual ships are larger and more heavily armed than ours, but they've never faced an enemy that fights harder when protecting others than when protecting themselves. President Santos smiled grimly. Give them hell, Admiral. The connection ended, and Kate turned back to the command center. Across the galaxy, human ships were racing towards Zalani space with a single purpose. Some captains had been on leave and recalled their crews in the middle of the night. Others had abandoned training missions and patrol duties. None of them questioned the orders. Admiral, Ryan called out, Captain Turner is requesting permission to speak with you. Kate looked at the main screen, where the face of Captain Alex Turner appeared. Turner commanded the dreadnought Iron Fury, the most powerful ship in the human fleet. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars from the Centauri Wars. Admiral, my ship will reach the Zalani system in 36 hours. Do we have any intelligence on Corvan tactics? Very little, Alex. They seem to rely on overwhelming firepower and psychological warfare. They've never faced organized resistance before. That's about to change, Turner said with a cold smile. My crew has been monitoring the Zalani distress frequencies. Every time we hear another evacuation ship die, my people get angrier. They're ready for a fight. Kate understood. Human crews were different from other species in the galaxy. Most aliens fought for territory, resources, or survival. Humans fought hardest when they were protecting others. It was something the Corvan would learn soon. Captain, remember that our primary goal is to save Zalani lives. Don't take unnecessary risks with your ship. Turner's expression grew serious. Admiral, with respect, necessary risks are what humans take when innocents are dying. That's what makes us Deathworlders. Meanwhile, in the Zalani system, Captain Jake Morrison watched the continuing slaughter from the bridge of the Vengeance. His ship was hiding in an asteroid field, observing Corvan movements and gathering intelligence. What he saw made him sick. The Corvan weren't just killing Zalani. They were taking their time, making the dying last as long as possible. Ships full of refugees were disabled first, then slowly destroyed while the occupants called for help that would never come. It was cruelty for its own sake. Captain, Amy Rodriguez said quietly, I count 42 Corvan vessels around the planet. They're organized into 3 battle groups. What about the Zalani evacuation ships? Lisa Harper looked up from her communication station with tears in her eyes. I'm only detecting 17 ships still running. Yesterday there were over 200. Elder Thys had remained on the bridge, watching his people die. The tall alien stood with dignity despite his grief, but Jake could see the pain in his large eyes. Elder, Jake said softly, tell me about your people. What were they like before this started? Thys looked at him with surprise. Why do you ask? Because I want to understand what the galaxy is losing. The elder was quiet for a moment, then began to speak. We have lived in peace for over 1,000 years, Captain. We devoted ourselves to healing and art and learning. Our children grew up never knowing fear or violence. We created medicines that could cure diseases that killed millions of other species. We wrote music that could make the listener weep with joy. Sounds beautiful, Jake said. It was, Thys replied. But the Corvan say beauty is weakness. They say only those who can kill deserve to live. Amy suddenly turned from her station. Captain, I'm detecting new ships entering the system. They're not Corvan. Jake felt his heart jump. How many? 12. No, 15. Captain, it's the Iron Fury and her battle group. The fleet is here. On the main screen, Jake watched as human dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The Iron Fury led the group, her massive guns already charging for battle. Behind her came battlecruisers and destroyers, moving with the deadly grace of predators who had found their prey. "Open a channel to Captain Turner," Jake ordered. The face of Alex Turner appeared on screen, and Jake could see the cold fury in the older man's eyes. "Jake, what's the tactical situation?" 42 Corvin vessels organized in 3 groups around the planet. They're still hunting evacuation ships. Turner's jaw tightened. "Not anymore. All ships. This is Captain Turner. We are here to stop a genocide. Rules of engagement are simple. Any Corvin vessel that fires on civilians or refuses to surrender will be destroyed. Any vessel that surrenders will be taken prisoner for trial." Elder Thess stared at the screen in amazement. "So many ships. You brought all of this to save us?" Jake looked at the Elder and spoke words that would be remembered by both species for generations. "Elder Thess, let me explain something about humans. We have a saying on our world. Evil triumphs when good people do nothing. Today, good people are doing something." The fleet moved into attack formation, and Jake knew the Corvin Dominion was about to learn a lesson that would echo across the galaxy. They had made the mistake of committing genocide while humans were watching. Now they would pay the price that Deathworlders always demanded for innocent blood. The battle for Zilani space was about to begin. The space around the Zilani homeworld had never seen so many warships. 237 human vessels hung in the darkness like sleeping giants, their weapons powered and ready. Across from them, the 42 Corvin ships seemed to realize for the first time that they might have made a terrible mistake. Captain Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the Iron Fury, watching the enemy formation on his tactical display. His crew was silent, waiting for orders. These men and women had served with him through 3 wars, but they had never been this angry before. "Communications, open a channel to all Corvin vessels," Turner ordered. "Channel open, sir." Turner's voice was calm and cold as he spoke to the enemy. "This is Captain Alex Turner of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are ordered to cease all attacks on civilian vessels and surrender immediately. You will be taken prisoner and tried for genocide under galactic law." The response came quickly, spoken in a harsh, grating voice that sounded nothing like the musical tones of the Zilani. "Human scum, you dare threaten the Corvin Dominion? We have crushed 8 species. We will crush you as well." Turner looked at his weapons officer. "I think that's a no." On the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Jake Morrison listened to the exchange, with Elder Thess beside him. The Zilani leader watched the human fleet with wonder and hope. "So many ships," Thess whispered. "You really came to save us." "We came to stop evil," Jake replied. "It's what humans do." The Corvin High Commander Vax studied the human fleet from his flagship. He had won hundreds of battles by using fear and overwhelming force against weak enemies. But these humans seemed different. Their ships were smaller than his, but they moved with precision and confidence. "How many humans are there?" Vax asked, his tactical officer. "Approximately 50,000 crew members across their fleet, High Commander." Vax laughed. 50,000 against our 20,000? They think numbers will save them. Prepare to attack. Show them the fate of all who oppose the Dominion. The first shots came from the Corvin fleet. Massive energy beams lanced across space toward the human ships, but the humans were ready. Their vessels scattered like a school of fish, avoiding the heavy weapons while their own guns began to fire. Captain Turner's voice filled the communication channels. "All ships execute attack pattern Delta. Remember, protect the civilians first, destroy the enemy second." The space battle that followed would be studied by military academies for centuries. The Corvin ships were larger and had more powerful weapons, but they fought like bullies who had never faced real opposition. They expected their enemies to run or surrender when faced with superior firepower. The humans fought like a pack of wolves. Captain Nancy Wells led her fighter squadrons. From the carrier Stormbringer, her small ship swarmed around the massive Corvin vessels, hitting them from all angles. When the enemy tried to target the fighters, the human capital ships struck at their weapons. "This is Wolf Leader," Wells called over the radio. "Corvin, flagship is trying to target the evacuation ships. All fighters hit their engine section." Dozens of human fighters dove toward the Corvin flagship, their weapons blazing. They took heavy casualties, but they kept the enemy focused on them instead of the fleeing Zilani civilians. Captain Ben Rodriguez commanded a squadron of destroyers called the Wolf Pack. His ships were fast and deadly, designed to hunt larger vessels. They moved through the battle like sharks, striking at damaged Corvin ships and finishing them off. "Target their communications array," Rodriguez ordered. "If they can't coordinate, they can't fight effectively." The Iron Fury engaged 3 Corvin battleships at once. Captain Turner's massive ship traded blow for blow with the enemy, its thick armor absorbing punishment that would have destroyed. "Smaller vessels. Forward guns concentrate fire on the lead ship," Turner commanded. "Show them what human engineering can do." The Iron Fury's main weapons fired in sequence, sending streams of superheated metal at near light speed into the Corvin vessel. The enemy ship's shields failed, and the next salvo punched through its hull like paper. On the Vengeance, Jake Morrison watched the battle while keeping his ship close to the remaining Zilani evacuation vessels. His job was to protect the civilians, not hunt for glory. "Captain," Amy Rodriguez called out, "3 Corvin ships are breaking off from the main battle. They're heading for the evacuation ships." Jake felt his blood run cold. Even in the middle of losing a battle, the Corvin still wanted to kill innocents. "All power to engines," Jake ordered. "We're going to stop them." The Vengeance raced toward the 3 enemy ships, its weapons charging. Jake knew his single ship couldn't fight 3 Corvin vessels and win, but he also knew he couldn't let them reach the refugees. "This is Captain Morrison to all Zilani ships," Jake broadcast. "Get behind us, we'll hold them off." Elder Thys looked at him with alarm. "Captain, you cannot fight 3 of their ships alone." "Watch me," Jake replied grimly. The Vengeance opened fire on the lead Corvin ship, hitting it with everything she had. The enemy vessel returned fire, shaking Jake's ship with massive explosions. But the human vessel kept fighting, putting herself between the Corvin and the helpless evacuation ships. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Pete Sullivan reported. "We're losing atmosphere." "Seal it off," Jake ordered. "Keep fighting." Just when it looked like the Vengeance would be overwhelmed, help arrived. Captain Rodriguez and his Wolfpack destroyers came screaming out of the main battle, their weapons blazing. "Sorry we're late, Jake," Rodriguez called over the radio. "Had to finish off a few Corvin first." The 3 enemy ships found themselves facing 4 human vessels. The odds had changed, and the human ships fought with the fury of protecting their own. Across the battlefield, the tide was turning. The Corvin had never faced an enemy that got stronger as the battle went on. Human ships that were damaged kept fighting. Human crews that lost friends fought harder. When Corvin vessels tried to retreat, human fighters followed them, making sure they couldn't regroup. High Commander Vax watched his fleet die around him. Half of his ships were gone, and the rest were taking heavy damage. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen before. "High Commander," his communications officer called out, "the humans are demanding our surrender again." Vax snarled, "Never. We are Corvin. We do not surrender to inferior species." "Then you die like the cowards you are," came the reply over the radio. Captain Turner's voice was cold and final. "All ships the Corvin have refused surrender. Show them no mercy." They showed none to the Zilani. The final phase of the battle was swift and brutal. The remaining Corvin ships were surrounded and destroyed one by one. Some tried to run, but human destroyers hunted them down. Others tried to hide behind asteroids, but human fighters found them. When the last Corvin ship exploded in a ball of fire, the space around Zilani Prime finally fell silent. Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, looking at the debris field that had once been an enemy fleet. Around him, his crew was quiet, processing what they had done. "Captain," Lisa Harper said softly, "I'm getting messages from the Zilani evacuation ships. They're singing." Jake listened to the beautiful musical voices of the survivors. They were singing songs of gratitude and hope, voices that had been filled with despair just hours before. Elder Thiss walked up to Jake with tears in his large eyes. "Captain Morrison, how can we ever repay this debt?" Jake looked at the Elder, then at the rescued evacuation ships on his screen. "By living, Elder Thiss. By rebuilding your civilization and showing the galaxy that beauty and kindness are not weaknesses. That's how you repay us." Admiral Phillips arrived 2 days later with medical ships and supply vessels. The work of helping the Zilani rebuild began immediately. Human engineers helped design new colonies with better defenses. Human doctors worked, alongside Zilani healers to treat the wounded. Human teachers helped Zilani children learn to feel safe again. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. Other species heard that the humans had traveled across space to save people they had never met. They learned that Earth's children would cross the void itself to stop genocide. Captain Jake Morrison returned to patrol duty a month later, but the galaxy had changed. Ships from dozens of species began sending calls for help when pirates or raiders threatened their worlds. They had learned that somewhere in the darkness, Deathworlders were listening, ready to answer any cry for justice with overwhelming force and absolute determination. The Corvan Dominion was gone, but its legacy lived on in a simple truth that echoed across the stars. Evil could not triumph while humans drew breath, because good people had chosen to do something about it